Good evening everybody, welcome to the studio this evening. Is this camera going to stay where I point it? There's nothing hold. I suppose I ought to get a bit of blue tack or a bit of sticky tape. Might stay where it is then. Doing pyrography tonight, and it was suggesting I do an elephant, and I could do. I'm also wondering whether to do some sort of savanna type scene. I mean, not quite this dark, but something like this with an elephant and I don't know, maybe something else in the background. It strikes me as it might be an interesting image. So I've got some other sort of African savanna type animals, or at least that's what Google search said they are. The waterhole idea also strikes me as being interesting, and I quite like that sort of potential image for either that one or that one, I'm not sure. Got a nice piece of ply here, and sort of got with the texture of the wood, the grain brings, whatever, got sort of something that kind of looks a bit like waterhole-ish. Actually, it's probably a bit too high, so maybe not. Don't like that side as much, so we'll use this side. So where's my pencil gone? This I could do with a hard pencil. Not a soft one. Soft pencil will put too much carbon down on the wood, which I then have to remember to erase. Because if I don't, it will burn into the wood. H. That should be a hard enough pencil. Now, yeah, the microphone is working tonight. Normally I might well have prepared this before I started, but tonight we're going to be freehand drawing. But I've got to decide just what I want to do. There's a fairly large area here. We could then do something sort of in there. The other thing is my perspective, freehand perspective drawing is great for regular objects, is terrible for landscapes. So this could be interesting. Yeah, I've got an eraser on my desk. So I suppose one of the things would be to establish roughly where we have a horizon. So we'll go with about a third, which is about there. So I wonder if that puts me too high. I'm looking at that one. That's about a third. Kind of feel like being able to maybe put a sun in the background. allows me to make sort of a goldenish colour. I mean, there is always something like that as well. That sort of elephant image is great for them eating. Wonder how on earth it avoids getting the prickles in its trunk. That one sort of strikes me as something which is quite, as I say, it's quite a good image. Well, let's see how we go. If I were to go with something round about a third, which is going to be about there. Like that. So I can just about see that. Now I'm thinking about this sort of picture also taking up actually about a third as well. That's quite interesting. Sorry, about 2/3 is that. Got room to put something in this side then. This will cover up most of the background over there. We've got a lot of space down at the bottom. It puts most of that into the sky. I suppose one of the things I could do with this is do a quick trace down on that. I mean, I could try and do do the whole image, which I suppose is an idea. That's the easiest way of doing it, to be honest, because I can do a straight trace down of the outline of that. I am kind of, as I say, leaning towards possibility of doing something like that there, and then, I don't know, getting the perspective right though for something like a giraffe perhaps. In the background, he's wondering whether that looks okay. Let's try a bit of trace down on this because that's the quickest way of doing it. I could sit down and draw it out, but quite frankly my drawing skills need practice. And I'm going to use a cheaper pencil like that one rather than use my 4H. So what I've just got out here, and you'll see in a moment, is, to all intents and purposes, carbon paper. It's not quite carbon. It's called Sorel paper, and actually it's wax free. Don't actually know what it's made of. No, doesn't say. I do know it's one of the better things for doing this sort of thing with. So I'll just put that down there. Makes it really a lot easier to do something like this. And all I do is roughly just follow the edges. So all I'm really interested here is where the edges are. I'm not even having to be that accurate because I'm really not going to stick to it. Well, I'll stick to it approximately, but this is just gives me a guideline. The important bit there is where the eye goes, really, more than anything else at all. Okay, and there I've just got a very quick outline. Tricks of the trade, you see. Now then, if I've done that roughly around about there, it would be quite nice to try and get this don't know whether this is going to work. Let's have a look. Let's draw it in because I can always erase it. Okay, let's have a look at what that looks like. Don't know. Let's work with the elephant first, I think. Scale's not too bad. Not great, but not too bad. I mean, the elephant is really up close, so let me put this paper away so I don't damage it. I also don't waste it. I am one for wasting materials, or rather for not wasting materials. One of these days I'll have to get some more of this stuff, but it goes an awfully long way. Right, now if I'm going to do pyrography, that's a heated tool. I could probably do with plugging the tool in. If you have a studio, you need lots of plugs. And I mean lots and lots of plugs. I've got about 20 or 25 plugs, most of which all want to be plugged in at the same time. Let's have a look what we've got in here. We've got a wide shader. Let's go to the small shader to start with. And what's the sorry, I shall endeavour to try and keep this camera in one position. There we go. Ghostbusters, isn't it? Heat 'em up. It's a grey elephant, which is kind of surprising. It wouldn't be green or something, but might be pink, I suppose. Grey elephant. Ivory tusk. Darkest area is that here. Oh, I see. That's the shadow. Okay, that makes sense. Now then, do I do the background dark or do I do the background light? Now I'm going to colour the background. I think it would be very nice to have a really rich background colour if I can. Another thing is, if I do that too much or if the sun's too low, we should in theory be backlighting these, which would make them really dark. Unless of course you used a flash, but then to take the picture, so to speak, but then the giraffe wouldn't be. So we probably can't put a sun in there, but we can still make the background somewhat rich. Texture in the ground will be interesting unless I make that quite dark, which we could do. I mean, we could be looking at like the sun behind us, which would that would tend to lighten the ground as well. I'm not great at ground textures. I know that screams challenge, but I'm not great at ground textures. So that sort of thing. Oh, possibly it's just that sort of thing. That'll be easier to do. So it's just like mud. And I was talking about a waterhole at the start of this, but I'm not quite sure that's going to be appropriate. So let's turn heat down and heat them up. Turning the heat of the tool down because what I want to try and do is just maybe give myself an outline guideline on this. See what this pen's like on this wood. Okay. I can smell that wood. That's a nice smell. So I do not want to burn this in, so what I've really got to do just for the moment is just come inside the mark. And just create a very light brown, very light colour, which I can just about see. Because once I've done this, what I'll then do is erase the pencil mark, because otherwise if I cook that in, and what effectively pyrography is, if you're not aware, what the heat is doing is drawing out the sap, the resin out of the wood, heating it up, which cooks it, which makes it a nice brown colour. The longer you cook it, the more brown it gets. It's a bit like maple syrup, and then it kind of sits on the surface of the wood in like a glaze. but glaze, varnish, similar sort of name for the same thing. And so if I do it over the marks, the pencil marks, or the lines here, I will then effectively be putting varnish over the top of them, which means they'll stay there, and I can't easily get rid of them. The way to get rid of them then would be to actually scrape off the glaze, the brown, in order to be able to erase them. And that may, well, it may or may not be a good thing for the wood. It does change the surface texture, which means that the pyrographic effects that are applied do differ slightly depending on the texture. So if I just scrape some wood off, it will have a different texture when heat's been applied. I want to avoid attempting to erase if I can. This is one of those occasions where the light that's helping you guys see what I'm doing isn't actually helping me. That might be a bit better. So I'm just applying this long enough to get an effect. It's almost a bit like a watermark, because I'm not applying a lot of heat here. Well, I'm trying not to apply a lot of heat. If you don't put the tool down on the wood, it does heat up and it can burn quite quickly. You can get a darker mark than was intended. So you'll possibly see me doing that quite a bit, which is literally just blowing on the tip of the tool. That cools it down, so that when I touch the wood I don't get an inadvertent burn. I could just wave the tool around in mid-air, same sort of idea, but I'm just cooling it down. Actually I want to go on the outside of the ivory because that's light. To anybody who's not familiar with pyrography, there are different forms of it. I prefer the form that I'm doing here, which is a photographic style. There are cartoon styles, and there's a style which is kind of like doodling or stamping. Each of which have the different merits. They've got different techniques, and they do different jobs, of course. No one's particularly any better than the other than for certain tasks. Doodling is not necessarily good if you want a realistic picture, of course. Whereas cartoon style is that. If you want a cartoon style picture, then that's quite good, because that basically is really dark outlines which are then coloured in. This is more of a photo, I hesitate to say photorealistic, but because it won't be. but it is in more in keeping with the photograph than it is in keeping with the cartoon. So you don't have dark outside edges. You don't have a dark line that's coloured in. You have something closer to a photograph. So this tool is electrically heated, and the electricity quite literally is flowing down the tip and around the tip and back out. So the tip is made of an alloy which, when you pass electricity through it, gets hot basically. The more electricity you pass through it, the hotter it gets. Now it's operating at a low voltage, is this, so it's a kind of a safe voltage. Generally these tools operate between about 1.5 and 3 volts. I don't actually know what this one's operating at. I would quite happily touch it if it was cold. It's hot. It's in excess, going to be in excess of 100 degrees. Is this? So I don't want to touch it for that reason, because the whole of the metal end is, including these tines, are hot. But if I were to put a new tool in, or take the tip out, I'd be quite happy to touch this. It's not going to affect me at all. So from that perspective, it's they're relatively safe to use. It's the heat that's is the risk with this tool. Actually, with any of pyrographic tools, really. You also get different kinds of pyrographic tool. There's one kind that looks, if you're familiar with soldering irons, they look very much like soldering irons, and to all intents and purposes that is actually what they are. They just have different tips on it, more suitable for heating wood than heating a solder joint. And there's this type, which is generally speaking again, it's all generalisms. These type here are more suited to fine detail work. These generally get referred to as pens, even though technically it's not a pen. Right, let me just switch that off because I don't want to actually overheat. Well, I won't overheat the tip, but I don't basically want it to keep it being heated while I'm not using it. That's the nice thing with this particular tool. They do heat up really quickly and cool. They also cool down relatively quickly as well. The soldering iron based tools can take something like they can take up to 5 minutes. Depends on the power of the iron. Some heat up really quickly and some don't. So now what I'm going to do is erase these darker lines. I've got the working I'll say burn marks. Actually, I'm not burning the wood at all. That's the one thing I'm not doing. As I say, I'm cooking the sap or the resin out of the wood. Very rarely do I actually burn wood, which is carbonising it. It gets really dark, but it kind of just gets really dark when you burn wood. You get one colour out of it, dark black, and that's about it. can be quite difficult to control. You also tend to get a lot of shrinkage when you actually carbonise wood, so the wood sort of shrinks away from what you're doing, which generates a texture in its own right, which may or may not be what you're after. It can sometimes look odd. Just generally applying a pyrographic tool will actually cause the wood to shrink, because you're literally taking some of the moisture, some of the liquid that's in the wood fibres away. When you do that, they get smaller. Now at sort of the normal levels of colouring, it's not necessarily a great problem. If you start carbonising the wood, it is, or it can be. Okay, let's get rid of those eraser bits. Quite useful item to have a paintbrush out. That was from the carving yesterday. A brush like that is very useful for keeping the carving piece clean, and just generally removing the debris from the wood, which of course is kind of what I'm doing here. Trying to make sure I get as much of that tracing mark away as I can. Not from the point of view of trying to hide that I've done it. It's so it doesn't get cooked into the wood. You then get a dark mark. I know this isn't Harry Potter, but the dark mark is not necessarily a good thing. It does tend to show up quite strongly in a pyrographic image once you put the pyro tool over the top of it. Now I've got one line down here I need to go over. As you can see, well, you may or may not be able to see, I think you can vaguely see sort of the outline of the pyrographic marking that I've made. It doesn't come off with the rubber, with an eraser, so I'm quite okay. I can erase quite strongly without having to worry about my guidelines disappearing. I do want to remove the eraser waste though. It doesn't smell nice if you heat it up and I have caught it on the iron sometimes. It's not quite like setting fire or heating rubber, but it's still not a very pleasant smell. I know you guys don't care, you can't smell it, but I can. Okay, now let me just add in a mark around here, which is where the mouth was, and then I can erase the final line that I've got here. There we go, and that's what we start from. And I'm looking at that and going, now where do I start? Dear. Blank canvas can be very daunting. It really can. Okay, well, let's start with an eye. Generally speaking, the eye here is really dark, as it is actually on most animals. The pupil is really dark. And one of the tricks with almost any art form, I guess, but pyrography especially, is getting the eyes. If you get the eyes in and they look somewhat okay, then that makes a big difference to the piece. Now, one thing I'm likely to do, I think, because there's like eyelashes, which potentially are lighter. And what I will possibly do is afterwards use maybe a razor blade, actually, or a craft knife, like a scalpel, to draw the eyelashes in, so that way they'll appear lighter. Now, generally speaking, I think I've only done it once, but if you mess up the eye, then often it's just worth saying blow it, start again. Which is why it's often a good idea to start with the eye. As I say, it's one of the key bits. Is the eye. If it doesn't look right, then your eyes, or the eye of anybody looking at it, if you kind of pardon the pun, is drawn to it, and you just can't. Well, it's really hard to get over it, so to speak. You know, there's a saying which is the eyes are the windows of the soul, and whilst I'm not quite necessarily certain as to what that saying is supposed to mean, it does kind of evoke the, you know, eyes are important. There, hey, we've got an eye in. We've started, and that's the key thing, getting started. Right, the ear is one of the darkest places, because it's in shadow from the trunk, which of course suggests in this particular picture that the sun is over here, behind, sort of up here and shining that way, which is kind of in keeping with what I was looking for, in that I wanted a front light. You know, you wouldn't see the elephant would be, if it was backlit, the elephant would be dark basically, as would the giraffe that I've drawn there as well. So I almost certainly am not going to do really dark lines to start with. I'm going to use a multi-pass technique, where what I'm going to do is apply some colour, then apply some more, and then apply some more, and we'll just keep increasing it and adding on. I've got a bit of a problem at the moment with lighting. I'm getting glare on this piece of wood coming back at me, which is making it difficult for me to see. Now, of course, when we did the trace down, then we put pyrographic guidelines just inside that mark. So I need to just bear in mind as I'm doing this that if I want to keep the right proportions, I probably need to come outside of the guideline that I established. Now this is a transition to the head. One of the things I will want to do at some point here is make this edge really sharp, or as sharp as I can get it. Don't need to do that just yet. Another thing I need to do is learn the characteristics of this wood as well. Each wood heats slightly differently. This piece of wood is no exception. I'm actually using this tool at quite a cool temperature. But as you can see, I'm actually getting quite a strong colour out of it. Now the amount of heat is actually a function not only of the heat of the tool, it's a function of the amount of electricity that's flowing to the tool, because that's what keeps it hot. Actually, one of the things you ideally want to do is keep the tool at a constant temperature. It's a lot easier to control when you do that. But the other large variable is how long I hold the tool in one place. The longer I hold it in one place, the darker it will be. But what I don't want to do is create lots of spots. I actually want a nice smooth colour. So I kind of need to get the tool moving so that one spot doesn't become darker than any other. Which is is also an airbrushing technique, is that. Theme Hospital, good evening, welcome to the studio this evening. So I didn't see when you actually, I think you probably said that a couple of minutes ago, but I was concentrating on what I was doing here. Yeah, I was just saying that airbrushing is another one where if you hold the airbrush still in one place, you get a big blob of colour, whatever it is that's in the brush. And to some extent, the pyrographic, the use of this tool and an airbrush have similar sort of techniques. which is perhaps why I picked up pyrography a little bit quicker than I expected when I first did it, because I kind of realised that I could use similar techniques. Now this is in quite dark shadow, but as mentioned a moment or so ago, I'm not going to try and go to the colour I want all in one go. The other thing really as well is that with pyrography, colour is relative. You don't how do I say this? Just because something's black on your reference image doesn't mean it has to be black in a pyrographic image. It just has to be the darkest bit in the pyrographic image to look right. So this already looks quite dark compared to sort of this area, but it's probably only about half as dark as it can go or needs to go. We may see that as I do other areas. If this is essentially almost the darkest area, then as long as everything else is lighter, I don't actually need to make this any darker. If I can't establish that many shades, then what I'll do is darken this down, which will give me a little bit more room to make a larger number of shades. Now, one of the key things in doing this sort of fill-in colour is to try and keep it as smooth as possible, and that's partly where you learn the wood as well, because things like the rings, which are already darker, you kind of want to merge those in so that they don't get, you know, still darker. So you're almost hiding the grain. Now I tend to like to take my time doing this. There are excellent artists, and you can find quite a few on YouTube, who can do this sort of thing fairly quickly, and they can do, you know, this sort of colouring in one pass. They've had a lot of practice, more than I have, or they're just more willing to take risk. But incidentally, talking of YouTube and pyrographic artists, one that is worth looking up if you're at all interested in pyrography, pyrographic artistry, that's a bit of a mouthful, is Jean Buick. That's Jean. Buick is Buick, I think. Hopefully YouTube would find it. Now, she is an absolutely fantastic pyrographic artist. A lot of what you'll see on YouTube, her included, the pyrography is done in time lapse, so it does look to go really fast. You know, you get a 30-minute video, which actually is probably, you know, sort of 10, 20, 30 hours of work. So just be a little bit wary if you think pyrography is a real quick thing, because you see YouTube videos taking 30 minutes to do a whole image. But definitely worth checking Jean out. So, Theme Hospital, how are you tonight? Been a little bit of an odd day up here in Yorkshire. You know, it started almost raining this morning, and gradually has got warmer and more humid throughout the day. And tonight I thought we were going to have a thunderstorm, and it's completely cleared as the sky. Weather is a funny thing. Now sometimes some wood is easy to colour on the first pass, and if you go over it again it's a lot harder. And I'm wondering a little bit if this wood is going to be the same. And it's not specifically something that's down to wood type either, it just seems to be down to the individual pieces of wood. It's probably got something to do with things like moisture levels and surface texture, if there's any preparations on the surface at all. So if they've applied sort of I don't know, a fungicide for example after the wood's been cut. That's not usual, by the way, but it can happen sometimes. Some of these edges will need to be really sharp, others won't. The outside edges, for example, don't. They tend to look better if they're not quite razor sharp. Sort of slightly fuzzy image reads better. I mean, if you think of most animals that have hair, for example, they don't have a really sharp outline because the hair sort of fuzzies that up a little bit. I mean, I don't think elephants have too much hair, if any. They do have some hair, but the skin texture itself is sort of a really rough skin texture, so that will sort of fuzz up the outline. But things like light shadow marks, so around this area here, there's really high contrast, and this area here between the ear and the head, it's not quite, but it's from black to white. It's a really high contrast area, and it's really sharp. Actually, around the tusk is going to be as well. So we have started. Amazingly, we started. Starting's always the hardest bit. Now, as I know this is one of the darkest areas, I'm going to do a little bit more work on it. I know this isn't going to be dark enough to establish the colour range. And at this moment it's kind of a muddy colour as well. It's not a really nice colour, so we'll be doing a bit more work on this. At the moment it's kind of like you've rubbed a dirty cloth over it. It's more dirty looking than a nice pyrographic colour. Because we've got obviously an elephant's got quite a strong skin texture. I'm not that really fussed about just how smooth I can make this. If I was doing something like a Sphinx cat, for example, which is a hairless cat in case you're wondering, then you kind of need a really smooth skin texture. If you're doing something like a whale or a dolphin as well, for example, they'd need a really smooth skin texture. For the elephant here, if I get little blobs or light and dark areas, I'm not that bothered, because of course it's, as I say, it's quite a rough skin texture, which in some ways makes it easier to do than say a dolphin. Actually, I'd quite like to have done a dolphin now. I'm not really good at doing sea though, so that would have been a challenge. I'll move this a bit over to point that way a little bit because I'm resting my head on my hand because I'm trying to get right over the top of the piece, and you get neck ache. If I rest my head on my hand, I can do it for longer. Actually, yeah. This is a relatively large piece, and any larger than this, I kind of would have preferred to use an easel for this, which tips it up, and then I can sit back and I can paint at a more comfortable angle. I don't have to support my head. The only thing is I couldn't really ideally put, well, I might get away with this camera, but this one wouldn't sit anyway. So stuff like using an easel may have to wait until later. Now I could turn the heat on this tool up, should make it operate faster, but at this moment in time it's been now several weeks since I've done any pyrography. So I just want to get back into the hang of it, shall we say, before I start doing things like heating it up. Now you can use this tool very much like a pencil. It is quite easy to draw with it, and I mean I do have tools that literally almost look like a pencil, but it's quite easy to draw with it, and providing it's not too hot I can sort of do what I'm doing now, which is just filling in little light areas, just like scribbling, just like you might scribble with a pencil, just to fill in some areas that have a slightly different colour to wherever it is you're working. So generally speaking, if you've got reasonable pencil control as an artist, then once you've learnt the technique of heat and how it works, that you're likely to make a reasonable pyrographic artist. Now I will say you'll just have to excuse me a little bit whilst I'm doing this, because if anybody says anything in chat, maybe a little bit before I notice it, as you can see I'm looking at what I'm doing, I'm not looking at the chat too much. This isn't as bad as chiselling actually. Carving, I'm very much more wary of with carving, looking up from what I'm doing, just because that sharp tool is just that, it's sharp. I can look up reasonably easily while I'm doing this. As long as I keep the tool moving, I'm not likely to overheat the area, making it darker than I want, or at worst burning it, so I can't keep looking up. I just got to remember to do so. Do sometimes get engrossed in what I'm doing. Now the trick very much though is to keep this tool moving, not to try leaving it in one space to create that colour, whatever, in one go. You can move it slowly, but keep it moving. Otherwise, if you create big blobs by holding it in one place, they can be really hard to fill in the gaps between them to create a smooth texture. Now that area is a bit darker than this one. Now as we... Actually, that's acceptable. I shall leave it like that. I've just looked at my reference image and it's a bit darker than down there, so conveniently I shall leave it. The real dark bit actually is this bit here. It lightens up a bit. That's almost as though there's two light sources, but there isn't. So there's quite a nice smell here at the moment of heated wood. And if you're kind of wondering what that is, you're not familiar with it, if you're familiar with the smell of sawdust, actually it's a similar smell. A little while ago, before I did the two pussycats that most of you have probably seen, my favourite tool actually used to be a spoon shader. Similar shape to this, but a spoon based bottom. I got this actually after seeing quite a few other artists use these flat shaders. They're supposed to be a little bit harder to use, but I actually find it a lot easier. It's now my favourite tool to use. It's quite versatile, but I actually get on with it in creating shading a lot better than I did the spoon shader. The shape of the spoon shader is supposed to make it easier for beginners, in that you kind of can merge colour together a lot easier. But I don't know whether it's, as I say, practice of other things like airbrushing, but I don't seem to have a problem doing that for myself and using this flat shader tool. Eddie Fall Guy, good evening. How did your stream go this evening? I saw you finished your bus pass off. Well, I was about to say, as you can see, but you possibly can't, or you might just be able to see, this is an elephant, which probably makes sense of the stream title. I have no idea whether it's an African elephant or an Indian elephant. I know it's got something to do with the ears, but it is supposed to be an African savanna area, but I'm not sure the reference pictures that I'm using came from the African savanna or somewhere else. They could have come from Longleat or something like that. That's a safari park in the UK, by the way, if anybody's not familiar with it. Yeah, not nice when you're cramping your fingers. Almost makes me, well, not almost, it does make me wonder if is there some way you could sort of do mechanical pliers or something which would just apply the force for you, but just allow you to just not use any. Waldos is kind of the name I was thinking of, but like remote control pliers, so you don't need to put force on your fingers. You can just sort of close your fingers like that and the pliers close. But would they be handmade if that happened? Interesting question, but anyway. I thought it was supposed to be us old men that had things like you know, fingers locking up AD, not you young uns. There's a difference of something like 20 years between how old AD is and how old I am. Now this may not even be the final black that I use in this area, but it will be enough for my first pass at this. I won't go any darker unless I need to do so. It will depend on what shading I need elsewhere in the piece, or what levels of shading in terms of colour depth. Last time I did a pyrography piece, which was of Felix, I had quite a hard time slowing down. I tend to want to work really fast. On this particular piece, I'm working really slowly. To work fast, I'd actually have to turn the temperature up. Otherwise I don't get much colouring. If I start moving this really fast, it just basically won't work. I just get warm wood as opposed to coloured wood. But I'm actually also wondering whether I'm going to get a better coverage and colour turning the heat down a little bit, because generally I do have it hotter than this. And sometimes it can be really hard to create a smooth colour or a smooth colour graduation, because the wood heats up so fast. So you have to move the tool fast to compensate. So trying something different, keeping the temperature relatively low. I mean, it's not super duper fast because the dial on this thing only goes up to 10, not 11. I get swollen ankles these days, 84 guys, so I can kind of sympathise. And that's partly because I actually don't do enough walking. With working from home most of the time, apart from once or twice a week now, I don't get as much exercise as I used to do when I worked in one of the towns. Or even actually when I was a salesman, even though I used to do a lot of driving, that involved a lot of walking as well. Invariably car parks are nowhere near buildings. Or Murphy's Law says whatever building you go into, the car park will be a long way away from it. Murphy's Law also states that when you get to said car park you will be late. Actually, that's one of the weirdest things, because I live up in Yorkshire and I used to go visit customers down in Birmingham, Southampton, South Coast, and invariably if I went to visit a customer in Yorkshire or even sort of in the next town, I'd invariably be late, but going all the way to Birmingham or Southampton I'd get there on time. Can't quite work. Well, I can kind of understand that, in that there's more scope to correct time errors, but I don't know, just something about it. The longer the distance, the more likely I am to be on time. Some of my other colleagues kind of said the same thing as well. Yeah, you fell down a mountainside and hit a stone wall, I believe. Hence the name that you your title, if I remember correctly. ASAP Stripper, hi, welcome to the studio this evening. Oh, I know the pain of that has got nothing like what I get with swollen ankles, which isn't a great deal. It's more like your skin stretching, which makes you kind of want to scratch it, which when you're my age, doing that a lot tends to make it sore. But yeah, no, you did mention having to hop off the mountainside, I believe it was. Yeah, I wonder where your where people's Twitch names come from. Can be quite interesting sometimes. And Eddie's there, as if I remember correctly, was his fall, and mine comes from an album title. And ASAP Stripper, I'm just wondering where yours comes from. Theme Hospital, who's around, sort of strikes me as somebody who likes the game. It's kind of interesting where people get their names from sometimes. There are those people on Twitch that I think purposely choose words or even just random collections of letters just to try and make it hard for streamers to say their names. Now this wood is quite nice. It's not shrinking away from the heat, which is nice. Some woods will do that. Pine does it especially. Shrinks away and you get a really odd surface texture sometimes. And occasionally some other wood will. Wood. When I was doing one of the pussycats, one of the wood areas of wood did that. And it can make the light bounce off it in weird ways as well. Okay. Oh, God, that gives me the EBGBs when you read something like that, Eddie Fall Guy. Kind of an obvious guess though, Theme Hospital. Yeah. You look like you've got a turbo marker, Theme Hospital. That's the battery symbol, isn't it? I think. Yeah. Hit a rock covered with sand. Ooh. Really painful. Oh, don't worry about that's not a long sentence. I sometimes have to do a long say things a lot longer than that. Well, if you've only had one serious accident, then that's not too bad. Right, I'm lucky. I've never, to my knowledge anyway, broken any bones or anything like that. I I don't have serious accidents. I tend to have serious illnesses. I've ended up in hospital about three or four times now with pneumonia, various types of pneumonia. First time I had a rare pneumonia that actually presented itself very much like meningitis. So I ended up in hospital because of that, and with extremely painful migraines. Had a lumbar puncture and had to lay on my back for 3 days, not moving. It's quite hard to do. It's quite hard to eat and drink as well like that. I can guess who that is going live. My iPod just chortled over in the background there. With Twitch iOS, certainly the iOS app seems to be really good at notifying you, even if it does, if Twitch on a PC doesn't. Oh dear. Okay, I accept it. You're accident prone. You win. Oh, cliff face, beach, bike. I have cut myself twice down to the bone. Once on me, on this finger here. Sometimes I can see the mark, the scar. And I could actually see the bone when I did that with a Stanley knife. And I actually did, you can't see it anymore, but I actually cut my elbow as well with a packing knife, which is basically a razor blade knife. I just caught it because it was laid on a shelf, and I caught it with my elbow. That went down to the bone. So, interesting seeing your own bones. Actually, in both cases I didn't have stitches, but they healed okay. Oh, there we go. I can see where it is now. Across the, just some lights. I can see the scar. Other times I can't. It went right across the knuckle. I know I was doing mine as well. I was cutting the end off the hose pipe, so I don't actually really know how I did it. I know what I saw, that was blood dripping onto the floor, and thought, where's that coming from? And then saw it. I didn't actually feel the cut, which probably was a good thing. And same with the elbow, because I was more concerned with the fact that I'd knocked the knife flying, and of course a razor knife flying around the place is not a good idea. And then realised I cut myself. It's amazing how you have the capacity to ignore, or not even ignore really, not even realise you've cut yourself like that. And at other times you catch yourself with a bit of paper and it stings like for hours. Now just up the edge here, this is the ear behind the sort of the forehead. The forehead's in bright light, but the ear isn't. The ear's in shadow, so I want a very sharp edge, but I need to apply sort of a little bit of elephant texture to it. I've not driven a motorcycle since I was 17 and a half, because that's back then. That was when you could get a car provisional license, and that and I passed my car test within about 6 weeks. So I was, and I never drove a motor. Well, it was a moped back then, but never drove a two-wheeler since. Well, two-wheel motorbike since then. I've driven bikes, cycles. I only came off it once, and that was on black ice. And I didn't so much come off it as lay it down and step away from it rather quickly, because I was coming off it. Didn't hurt myself at all. I stayed standing on black ice, which really surprised me, because I was doing about 25 miles an hour at the time, because I suddenly realised it was black ice. Yeah. It's that sort of reason. That's why I really didn't want to stay on the bikes. Not that I'd be kind of a fair weather cyclist, bikeist anyway. But and it's, you know, yes, it's nice, and as you know, but I'm sort of the person that would want to, even on the hottest day, wear a full leather kit, you know, for safety and things like that. And that can get a bit hot even when you're doing a reasonable speed on a bike. So I kind of prefer, I'm more into the comfort these days rather than the speed or the agility of a bike. Don't begrudge anybody else wanting to ride one, by the way. You know, it's, you know, if people want to, they're quite welcome to do so, and you know, there shouldn't be accidents. So I would say I don't think it's always a car that causes an accident between a car and a bike, but there are quite a lot of them. This is it's not. This is quite a fuzzy texture on the outside here. The ear sort of folds over, and so you don't have a sharp edge because of that. Where the ear folds over, it's kind of soft edge, soft focus type thing. Okay, yeah, either, you know what I mean. It's a proper protective gear, I guess. I you know, and it's developed a lot more since I was a kid, because you know, things like Kevlar and Kevlar fibers and things like that just weren't around really in that sort of gear back then. So you know, leather was probably the best available at the time. I mean, having said which, with a moped I didn't have any. But whilst you'd see you know, some kids going around in shorts and t-shirts, I'd always have a full, you know, full length trousers, proper shoes on, a full length jacket on, sorry, a full sleeve jacket on and things like that. It always amazes me when you're on holiday and you see, well, not only locals, but you see sort of people who probably never bike that much, driving a fairly powerful bike, 200-300cc bike, and there'd be a passenger, typically a fella with a woman pillion passenger in swimwear. And when some of the places I go, like Greece and the islands, some of the roads are effectively gravel roads. In fact, a lot of them are gravel roads, especially down to beaches. And I just cringe at the thought of them coming off, because they're usually racing around, doing 30-40 miles an hour. Doesn't sound a lot, but on a gravel road, especially if you come off, gravel makes great sandpaper in bulk, and that maybe give you the idea of what I was thinking of. Yeah, I'm guessing. Well, I mean, with some of the bigger bikes, some of the 1000cc plus bikes, they're as heavy as cars, and you've got effectively designed with full crumple areas, and if you're on about the touring bikes, you've got quite often the fairings are reinforced fairings, so you've got sidebar protection on them almost. I don't know about loud. I mean, the thing that always amuses me is loud exhaust mean you're wasting power. So it's kind of always struck me as funny, these people like really powerful bikes and then make them loud. Can't quite work that one out. But yeah, full license. Yeah. Oh yeah. But it's just the image that always comes to mind is seeing these not on hospital, on holiday. And you can see them fishtailing as well, and have them think it's funny. You can see them laughing about it, and and I don't know how they can. Well, I don't know how, as a responsible driver, you could allow a rider, you could allow a pillion passenger to wear a bikini, or even swimming trunks, to whichever way you ran to put it without being particularly sexist about it. Just how could you be that irresponsible? As you say, AD, even a tarmac road, and tarmac roads aren't that smooth as well. So, but I always think about things like the TT races, and I actually have seen bikers come off at sort of like 70 miles an hour, a couple of them, wearing full leathers, and they're sliding down the road. I mean, the TT races are sliding down the road at 150 miles an hour, and they stand, generally speaking, they'll stand up at the end of it, and the leathers are a bit damaged, and they've probably got a few burns, I suspect, but they can walk away. Yeah. But I mean, a nice tuned pipe on a bike, as you probably know, AD. The tuned pipe doesn't have to make it quiet, but it doesn't have to give a lot of power boost. If you can push that, if you can push the power that's generating that noise back into the cylinder, into the onto the piston, and then put it down on the road. But that's doesn't sound like a powerful bike, does it? If it just purrs, it's got to sound like a T-Rex is shouting through a megaphone. Mind you, I've always I think I used to fly model aircraft, and even something like a 10cc engine, you take the silencer off of that, and that thing is loud. I mean, it screams a bit, which is it's a raucous sound, which doesn't help in the sound's unpleasant, relatively speaking. But Boy, that thing's loud. So I can't imagine something like a 350 or a 500 with a straight pipe. Well, I suppose so, yeah. I mean, once you hit that sort of speed, what happens to the rest of the power you probably don't care about. It's kind of like the opposite argument to the electric car, where they're putting noise generators on the electric cars so people can hear them coming, because otherwise they're relatively quiet. And there's consideration being given to legislation to making it a legal requirement that the cars have got to be noisy. And I was reading that the other day and laughing, because you get people then like Rolls-Royce and BMW who spend millions and millions of pounds trying to make their engines quieter so you can't hear them coming. And it just struck me as being funny. Electric cars you've got to make louder. Petrol engine cars that you make quieter are okay. I'm sure there's something doesn't sound quite right in that. If anybody who's joined the stream isn't quite aware of what I'm doing, it's pyrography, and the image, well, what I'm currently working on is an elephant. Whether it's an African or an Indian elephant, I'm afraid I don't know. I've got a giraffe over here to do it, so it's kind of a savanna-ish sort of scene. So there may be some dark trees in the background. Don't know, we'll see how we get there. But for the minute, I'm working on the elephant. This is an ear which is in shadow from his trunk. It's one of the dark. Well, apart from the eye, it's one of the darkest elements on the elephant. So I'm kind of making it dark, not as dark as I could get it, but I'm kind of establishing a reasonably dark tone to start with, so that I can space the other tones out in terms of bright or lightness. They give me the headroom or the room to do that if I make this reasonably dark. I can always go over it and make it darker if I still don't have enough room to establish all the shades that I want to use or will be using. I don't go into this thinking, oh, I need 16 shades or something like that. I will sort of just go through, and if something wants to be a bit darker, I'll make it a bit darker, and then I'll look at that in relation to something else that should be a bit darker and say, oh well, I need to darken that, etc. Fear Reaper 7, good evening, welcome to the studio this evening. Seems we've been spending... How am I doing? Long time no see. Indeed, I was about to say that. I'm not doing too bad, thank you. I have recovered from the colds I got on holiday, which I am pleased about, and I can talk normally now. And it's reasonably pleasant, temperature-wise, here in the studio, which makes a change. It's quite cool outside, which is... and I've got the windows open, so that's helping. Okay. But how are you? How are you doing? The stream tonight seems to be talking about accidents and loud bikes and things like that, but it's being an interesting series of conversations. Okay, I'm not trying to create a straight line. I'm trying to create a crisp line around here. It's a natural head, it's a natural forehead of the elephant, so it's a sort of a smoothish sort of curve shape, but it's not not accurate. Oh, that's good. It's always nice when people are doing well. If anybody's wondering, that has been in the stream within the past few weeks. We have finished, that's me, so collectively we, but me in particular, have finished carving the dragon. That we managed to finish last night, which I was quite pleased about. As if you've read the sort of bio information below the screen, the stream window, or even on one of the profile pages, I'm not quite sure what it is, it kind of says I'm a kind of I've got patience, but I do like to do different things. I'm starting to get a little bit sort of with the dragon, that I'm really pleased it was finished and time to move on to something else. I'll tell you what, I'll show those of you that may not have seen, I will show you what it looks like. There we go. Trapping your finger in something like that, yeah, umbrellas, and yeah, they get painful as well, nipping your fingers like that. Thank you very much, Fear Reaper. Took a little bit of doing it. It's the first dragon I've carved, as you probably knew, and it's the first time I've carved a piece this substantial. I have worked on a piece this large, but it wasn't as complex as this. It was just a simple twisted ribbon with a couple of entwined hearts, but this is one of the most complex carvings that I've done. But as I say, I was seriously looking forward to doing something else by the time we finished. There is a possibility I might do some pyrography on this, maybe colour the mountain that he stood on, just possibly put an eye in there. But generally speaking, I quite like the wood textures, the natural wood textures, and I may well just put sort of like a clear polyurethane over it. Probably a matte one, I suspect, to just keep the wood a little bit stronger and make it a bit more resistant to dirt. But there we go. Of course, next time I might be a bit faster doing something like this. It's all a learning curve. That's the nice thing about doing all these things. Talking of X things, closing X things up, Theme Hospital. I haven't done it with the chainmail rings, but I have done it with other things. Where something like a pair of pliers, it's usually a bigger pair than this. I'll be holding something, and I haven't got a ring here, but holding something like that, or generally speaking like that, so it's off one side, and I'll be holding it on my hand like that, and I'll be holding it so tight, and this thing will just pop out, and because I say longer pliers than this, but effectively you do that really fast. Because as Eddie knows, that if you're really holding a pair of pliers, and I probably can't do it with this one, but you can make a real snap noise with them if you're holding it really tight. And I know the pliers I was doing it with were about twice as long, so the tips are just as sharp, but they were further apart, so I didn't half catch some skin. That hurt. Yeah, I'm not exactly impatient. It's more, I can be really patient about doing these things, and I've described patience before. I don't actually think impatience comes when something won't quite go where you want it to do, like with the chainmail. You can't quite get a ring in somewhere, or it keeps slipping out, and that's when I describe patience. But it's more of I don't know. It's kind of more of a boredom type of thing. But I'm not bored as such. It's getting tired of the same thing at the it's a repetitiveness. It's a bit like having ham sandwiches for every meal for 2 weeks. You kind of want something different, but I can't really describe it. It's an urge to move on. As I was saying, if I hadn't been so close to finishing, I probably would have put it away for a couple of weeks. You kind of lose inspiration or the will to just pick it up and do a little bit more. And at that stage, if you start forcing it, then you tend to make mistakes. So you kind of have to recognise, hey, it's time to move on. Interestingly, I've noticed Chris, see what happens. I don't know, those of you who don't know him, Chris makes large 3D models out of pipe cleaners, and by large I mean sort of 5 feet high type of large. And he's been playing Minecraft for the past few nights, probably about a week now, I think, actually, because as a change, you need to just give your mind a rest from the things to stop burnout, I suppose, is the best way of describing it. It actually is a thought that's crossed my mind, or did cross my mind a few times when I was doing the dragon, whether to just take a night off and do a bit of Minecraft or something like that. Not even stream maybe, but perhaps just stream something different like that. Of course, that's the kind of the nice thing with doing so many crafts, is I could just sort of say, actually, I'm going to make a necklace, or I'll do a bit of scraper board. You ordered something today that I might find strange. Go on, I'll bite then, Fear Reaper. What do you feel that I might find strange? You've ordered half a cow to do some tattooing on? No, that won't be really strange because they use pig. But anyway, pig skin for that, for practice. What's the speed cube? I know what a Rubik's Cube is, but what's a speed cube? For a reason. I used to be able to do the Rubik's Cube. I learned how to do it, and I could do it, I don't know, in 30 seconds or whatever. It wasn't world record speed, but it wasn't slow, if you see what I mean. I knew exactly the moves to make. These days I can only remember how to do the first 2 layers. I cannot remember the 3rd layer. Go on, tell us the reason then, Fear Reaper. What is a speed cube, and why have you bought a Rubik's speed cube? Other than, well, I don't even know if you're actually intending to complete it. Competition cube. Oh, is that where they have sort of all smoothed edges and things like that, so it doesn't catch and moves fairly freely? Oh, okay. Are you entering some competition? Do we have a world record Rubik's completer in our midst? That's a serious question. I wasn't. You do? It was a serious question. I wasn't expecting you to say no. I wasn't having a go at you, but I wasn't mocking you or anything like that. But okay, go on then. Tell us some more. You've got to. You now have to use more words than 1 or 2. I suspect you've intrigued all the people watching in chat as well as me. Okay, right. That's got me puzzled, because I would have thought, Rubik's Speed Cube, your concentration would have to be in really quick bursts rather than long-term concentration. Okay. So it's about focus to start with. Interesting. No, I don't find that strange at all. I can quite easily understand how that would improve focus, because you do have to, as you say, concentrate. I would have thought it was very short-term burst focus and concentration, but yeah, you do have to be able to see things and where they are quickly. Well, I hope it's successful for you. There's nothing child's toy about a Rubik's cube. I can't see many children that would be able to complete a. I mean, to be honest, I had to be taught how to complete it, and I guess who the people, because I was at school back then. It was only just when I was at school when it first came out, and I'm sure the people that taught me had to be taught as well. But I wouldn't think there's a lot of these things like that which people potentially think of as toys, but I wouldn't call that sort of thing a toy. Mind you, have you said which? I've got a half completed 1/12, 1/12 scale tank sat there, and people think that's a toy. I've got, I've got not big. I haven't got the big helicopters anymore, but I've got the model helicopters. People think they're toys. Usually, older women think they're toys. Gets really irritating, does that? Especially if my wife says you're playing with your toy when she's trying to be a little bit edgy, shall we say, calling it with toys. And so women go play with handbags instead. Let's be sexist on purpose. Yeah. And some fellas do the same thing, playing with toys, a model helicopter, some of the larger model helicopters, or even models, you describe them as toys, but they're actually just small aircraft. They have exactly the same physics, exactly the same need to fly them and everything else, and they can do a lot of damage if they hit you. It's not my definition of a toy, and yet people describe them as such, and it's a completely, they're doing it in a negative connotation, obviously on purpose, and but yeah, I don't describe them anything like toy-like. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's just the engine. That's not the rest of the train that goes with it. Yeah, and it's. I'm kind of a fan of the model trains. I like them. Describe me as fan. Fan's a bit of a emotive word in a way. I love model trains. I love the detail in them. To be honest, I like anything with lots of wheels. And trains have lots of wheels. But I, as an artist, I love the shapes that they make and all this sorts of stuff, and model layouts. I'm a creative person, kind of hand in hand type of thing. But yeah, they're the prices are amazing. Well, these days I actually want to get myself an N gauge, make myself an N gauge layout with, but I want to do it fully computer controlled. So I want to do the creative bit, and then I want to get a computer to drive the trains, and I probably won't be that interested in driving them. It's kind of like the same with the articulated truck or even the tank. I like making them, but once I've made them, I'm kind of I sort of drive them occasionally. I hesitate to say play with them. I kind of drive them occasionally, but yeah. That is kind of one of the reasons why I want an N gauge. I'd love to do Z, but you can't get the DCC control in the Z, the computer control, if you're not familiar with what DCC means. But being able to be driven by a computer, so you can run more than one train at once on the same line. I'd love to do Z, but they're too small to put the controllers in for that reason. Actually, I'd really, and I'm probably going to get use T-scale. For anybody that, I'm sure most people don't know what T-scale is, but it means the track is 3mm apart. So that's about 3mm. You could get a complete oval layout in that space of this board. In fact, you could get more than an oval layout in there. You could get a little bit of track in T-scale, and you could run on there something like there is a T-scale model of a 125 mainline express with about 5 coaches, or 2 driving cars, 3 coaches, and you could run it in that space. And when or if I get round to doing the N scale, I'm going to put a T scale layout into there as part of the layout for a particular reason that I've got in my mind, to be revealed if and when I ever do it. I could exchange it for a lot of cash, 84 guy. Because it's got a sound module. When it's finished building, it's got a sound module in it as well. So it doesn't fire though. It simulates firing, but it doesn't actually fire anything, any projectiles or anything. I've got the hull of the turret to do. That's the bit that's not finished, and maybe I'll finish that on stream one day as well. When I get the room, it's all about room, because that needs the parts need spraying and well, painting, and then clear coating before they get built. And I've also got enough material, and I've got almost all the design for a flatbed trailer that can be pulled by the 1/14 scale Arctic trucks. So I've got the materials to make a flatbed to put it on, so it can be carried. Yeah. Model cars. Okay. Yeah, they shift. When I was a kid, we used to had an electric car. Technically these days it'd be called a drift car, but back then it was just a car. And I used to work in a supermarket, and at the end of the day the smooth floors used to be really dusty, and it used to be, because being staff and shelf stacking, we used to clean the floors and everything after it closed and everybody had gone home. So we'd run the car around the supermarket, dusty floors. You could drift it round all the corners, and that was quite fun. Didn't wear out tyres that way, of course, and we weren't doing anything like 50 miles an hour. But yeah, mean, some of the I'm just trying to think now. There's an electric speed record for a model car, which is some ridiculous speed. I don't actually know what it is, but I'll say something ridiculous, like it's about 200 miles an hour, and that's a sort of, shall we say, standing quarter of a mile each way, usual sort of thing. I think it is something like quarter of a mile as well, and it was sort of, it's shaped like the bullet car type thing, and it's all sort of gyro stabilized and things like that, and amazing thing. Okay, I'm kind of lazy. This is a kit that it's a Tamiya kit. I like building. I don't necessarily like going out and finding all the bits. Yeah. Yep, that I don't mind that Fear Reaper. Zagreb Dubrovnik. Okay. That's an interesting track. Tarmac track, so I can see you wearing tyres out on that one. People always think cars are easy to drive. Yeah, I've only made one boat. Well, me and my father made one boat. It was something like a 3-foot long motor torpedo boat, but it was done out as a fire tender sort of scheme rather than the MTB scheme. But it's only one boat I've done. I've been more interested in the flying, but a couple of my friends used to do the small fiberglass powerboats, and those things that kind of, they're virtually flying. You've got sort of a small aerofoil or just the very edge of the step in the water and the prop in the water, and that's about it. Extremely love flying. Yes, Zagreb Dubrovnik. I finished the Dragon. Finished that last night. I'll give you a quick look. There you go. At some point I'm going to have to take some pictures of things like this and put them on a website, but I haven't got round to it yet. Thank you. That's kind of you to say so. Now we're working on an elephant, which was 3D Guy suggestion, and AD4 Guy seriously supporting that suggestion last night. Yeah, in fact, when I made the boat, when I first made the boat, proportional radio control was extremely expensive and quite, I won't say quite rare, but shall we say it wasn't the norm. No, that's fine, Fear Reaper. I'm going to stop in a few minutes anyway, so thank you very much for dropping in and saying hello. It is nice to see you again, and nice to have a chat about RC stuff as well. Yeah. I would not like to catch a prop on those things, especially now with the what do they call it, batteries, lithium-ion battery, lithium polymer batteries, when they're dumping about 300 amps into a motor. Ah dear, those things don't half fly. Yeah. what amazes me is how, shall I say, they appear to turn on a dime. Yeah, that's right, they are. And a lot of them, of course, sharpen the blade. Yeah, the blade edges to reduce the. Or they used to, shall I say? Because I don't know if it's right or wrong, but they used to sharpen the blade edges, in theory, to cut through the water, so it didn't cause as much cavitation. I'm not sure whether that's strictly true or not, because they I'd have thought an aerofoil shape would have been better, but there again, I'm not into liquid dynamics. Oh yeah, I've never seen anything 10cc. Yeah, the usual 60s, but I've never seen anything faster than that, to be honest. 50cc engines. That's what was in my first moped, was a 50cc engine. I know they have them in planes as well these days, or even bigger than that. Small chainsaw motors. Yeah, they are huge. But I mean, some of the electric motors, they're running. I mean, even in the helicopters, they're running. Was it right? I know there's enough power comes out of the things to drive a small car, but they're literally dumping something like 300 or 400 amps at 24 volts or 21 volts into the motor. And when you think about that, it's what's that? 300 amps at 20. That's about 6 kilowatts. It's a hell of a. I mean, they only run for about 5 minutes, but at that power rating. But it's one hell of a thing, and I highly suspect that it'd put it'd give a 50cc some competition. Actually, one of the models I've always wanted to make. Maybe I'll do it one day. Is a hovercraft, but I'd love to make the SRN4, which is the one that used to fly out of Dover cross Channel, carrying the car ferry. I've always loved the idea of doing a hovercraft, specifically that one for some reason. But just a hovercraft in general would be nice under RC control. Kind of just one of those models that I've always thought I'd love to do. Which is partly why I've got the trucks, because I always wanted to do a truck, and I never knew that you could actually get a kit, so it was always a case of trying to source the parts and whatever you to do it, and then came across the kits, and that was it. I had one of those fairly quickly, and I've got a kit. Well, I've got 2 kits left at the moment. One more to build, and one that I actually want to turn into a bus, but I haven't decided whether to make a double-decker bus or to make a bendy bus yet. Yeah, yeah, the Bluebird. Yeah, mind you, these days somebody had actually put a small turbine in one of those. Yeah, I can't quite see the point in making something like that if you don't have the room to run it. It just becomes a shelf queen. How does that here look? Oh, that here just sort of vanishes over there, so. I don't. Well, I'll say no. It's not. No, actually, I haven't. It could be on my other screen, but that's the reference pitch for the elephant that I'm doing. But I'm only sort of doing this this end of it, the front end. And I've got a few others that I was looking at earlier. I mean, that's the one for the giraffe. I've got some other elephant pictures here and some sort of savanna pictures, sunsets. Give me some idea of the trees, perhaps, and I always have a problem with perspective as to the right angle to be looking at, and so that was a couple of reasons for that. And I got some more here again, sunsets and trees, a little bit again. I mean, there's a couple of rhinos here, which was a possibility to do, but again, sort of savanna. What I might do is, rather than, well, I may try and put some grass in, but I may just do sort of mud-like background. Can't make it too dark like this because it's backlit. It's not backlit like this, it's front lit. And an elephant there. I do not understand how he doesn't damage his nose, trunk with the trying to eat these, because the spikes on these things are hard and really sharp and pointy, and yet it seems to be quite happy holding on to it. So those I mean, a couple of other things here, but again, another rhino, a hippo, another elephant to look at, and again another background. So these were just some random images off the internet. Another elephant, just to give me sort of an idea of textures and things like that, and shapes. You may have seen on there, I did actually do a trace down on it, just to save me the time in drawing it out, which you can see well, you can't see the trace down anymore because I did a rough outline with the heated tool, and then removed all the trace down so I don't cook it into the image. But so we cheated a little bit, if you like, just to speed things up. Right, I'm going to just finish this area of the ear off for tonight. I've noticed I've got a little bit of lots of circles showing up, so I'm going to be a little bit lighter handed. I think I've probably been pressing a bit too hard. I don't know why it is, there is a tendency to press, and there's kind of no real need. It needs a little bit of pressure to keep contact so that you apply heat more efficiently to the wood, but you don't actually need to press down with this. It does act a bit like an iron though. If you ever ironed clothes, you remove the creases. This is a bit like that. You're almost ironing the wood. Actually, you can scotch clothes the same way, which is sort of the same thing. It's a slightly different mechanism if you put a hot iron down on cotton or something like that, but it is a similar sort of mechanism that colours wood and colours material if you scorch it. So Eddie, the next time you're doing the washing, you can practice your pyrography. Okay. God, they get up early, don't they? Even I don't. Well, even when I'm going to work, I don't get that up early when I'm going into town. Close, but not that early. Have a good night, Eddie. Well, no doubt. No, I won't actually be watching you tomorrow afternoon. unfortunately, because I will be going out tomorrow afternoon, but have a good stream tomorrow, and maybe see you around again. Right, actually, it is disappearing like that, and I just finished off that section that I wanted to do there, so I'm going to turn the Pyro tool off. This, as we loosely, I say loosely basing it, well, quite closely basing it on this elephant. So we're working in this area here at the moment, the ear around here. What I'm probably going to do is do a rough colour shading of everything, so it'll look smooth, and then start to put texture in all the wrinkles of the trunk and on the face. May do that having coloured it. May do some, like the giraffe colouring first and come back to that later in the detail stuff, but don't know, just do it how I feel like at the time, and I may sort of hop between things. But we've made a good start. We've got the outline, started to establish our main colour levels, the eyes in, which is the darkest point, so that's the darkest I get to. This doesn't need to be that dark, or some areas up here possibly will do, may not. It's all about relativity, and I don't necessarily need to sort of get as dark as you saw in the reference image, but we shall see how that goes. Anyway, that is enough for tonight, I think. I've enjoyed having you all around. Zone Zero. I'm doing well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I'm about to close down for this evening, but thank you for dropping in. If there's anybody else that is watching that doesn't follow me, I would of course encourage you to do so, and you are also welcome to follow me on Twitter if you would like, because I do tweet when I go live. I tweet when I go live. I don't tweet what I have for my sandwiches, so you're okay. It's about the only tweet that you get is when I go live. So you can feel relatively safe in following me on there if you want. Details will be on the end plate and below the stream window. And if you just want to catch me again tomorrow night, 2000 hours British summertime, 1900 hours GMT, or 2.5 hours ago in whatever time zone that you are in, that would be the equivalent of 8 PM in the UK. So 2.5 hours ago in your time zone, tomorrow night, that'll be roughly when I'm on again. Streaming 7 nights a week, around about the same time, for 2.5 hours, just depending on how things go. But again, everybody, thank you very much for watching, interacting and chatting this evening. It has been great fun. I look forward to seeing you again on the next stream. Bye bye.